Hi everyone, Mr. Peabody again, and I'm going to do some more fun with medical shows, but this covers more than just medical shows, covers all shows, cop shows and all that stuff and everything. But I'm not going to be showing any demonstrations or anything, because you guys have seen this 1,000 times. I don't need to show it to you. As soon as I explain it to you, you're going to say, yep, I've seen that many times, and that's what happens. I'm going to be talking about the pulse, right? So if you go to get someone's pulse, a lot of you guys already understand this stuff, but I'll just explain it to you. If you're going to go for someone's pulse, if you see a cop walking up to a victim on the side of the road, and they do that, and they say, "Oh, they're gone," I claim bullshit. That's not where the pulse is. It's not on the side of the neck. It's here, at the front, on either side of your windpipe. That's your carotid pulse. Okay, so if they're not digging their fingers in here, they're not feeling anything. Right. So if they're just touching the side of the neck, they're not getting anything. There's several places on the body you go for a pulse. If you couldn't find a certain pulse, you'd actually check other places on the body for a pulse. One's the radial pulse, so that's on the hand. So as best as I can show it, it's right there. Alright, that's radial pulse, and that goes through the thumb. And it's called the radial pulse because this is your radius of your arm. So your radial pulse goes all the way up through there, through your thumb, and so the thumb has its own pulse. So you can't use your thumb to take a pulse, which comes to another problem. I've seen it on a couple of shows where people, working out the camera here, they grab people by both hands and they squeeze their wrist and then ask them questions to try and determine if they're telling truth or the lie. The problem is, what are they using? So they're reading their own pulse and the other person's pulse. So there's no way they're going to get an accurate reading. So I have to call bullshit on that too. But yeah, so you've got the carotid pulse, you've got the radial pulse, you've got the femoral pulse, which is on the inside of your leg. And you can take it from different parts of the body, including the feet, to determine, if there's any damage. So in other words, if you've got someone in an accident, you can actually test to see, okay, have they got the radial pulse? Carotid pulse, obviously they need that to stay alive. But check the radial pulse to see if there's any breaks or problems with the blood flow through the arm. And you actually can check the legs as well. So if there's any breaks in the leg, or any interruptions in the blood supply to the feet, you can check that. You can check the pulse on the feet, on the ankle, and you're trained to do all that stuff. Another problem I had with medical investigations was, in one of the episodes, he walked up to a guy and he grabbed him by the wrist for just a few seconds and said, "Well, you've got a good strong pulse and you're fine." I call bullshit, because any medical professional, when they're taking a pulse, they're going to do it for a minimum amount of time. If they don't have much time, they're going to do it for about 15 seconds, right? If they really don't have much time, they'll do it for 10 seconds, but it's not recommended. 15 seconds is like sort of the minimum. If you're doing rounds in a hospital, or just if you're doing basically basic obs on any person, you're going to usually do it for about at least 30 seconds. Alright, so you're going to count up for 30 seconds how many beats the heart does. What people don't actually understand is we do more than that. It's not just how many beats there are, it's how strong the pulse is, how regular the pulse is, if it's thready, if it's weepy, if it's, off kilter. These are all things that we read as we take the pulse. So we can tell a lot about a person's health from the pulse. So yeah, don't think they're just holding your hand because they want to make you feel better. They're holding your hand to find out how good you actually are. So if someone grabs your hand for a few seconds and says you're fine, I have to call bullshit. Because all this stuff gets documented, and the pulse gets documented as the pulse rate over 60 seconds. Right? So it's beats per minute. Right? So if you only take the pulse for 10 seconds, you've got to times it by 6. If you only take it for 15 seconds, you've got to times it by 4. If you take it for 30 seconds, you've got to times it by 2. And I can guarantee you, anybody that has come across a problem with the pulse will take it for the full minute, and then, they'll document everything. So if it's at all off, or if there's a bit of a skip in the beat or anything like that, everything gets documented. Nurses document things differently to a doctor because, well, according to Australian, the way we do in Australia is a nurse can't make a diagnosis. A nurse can make a nursing diagnosis, but it can't be worded the same as a doctor's, because doctors sort of like get a bit antsy about things like that. In fact, doctors, when they were first training nurses to use stethoscopes, when they were first training nurses to take blood pressures and things like that, doctors sort of like, when they first started, doctors were not happy about that. Right? They weren't happy about that. But they also weren't happy when a nurse had to call a doctor in the middle of the night and saying, there's something wrong with this patient. What's wrong with him? I don't know, because you wouldn't let me take his pulse and you wouldn't let me take his blood pressure. So yeah, the nurse's role has gone much higher than it used to be. Right? So don't be surprised, because a nurse is trained very highly. At least they are in Australia. See ya.